Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lost and Found podcast. This is your host, Amanda. I am so excited. Today's guest has spent nearly 4 decades helping people reclaim their lives from the inside out. Faust Ruggiero is an award-winning author, therapist, and creator of the Process Way of Life. He has a counseling approach built on more than 50 internal human processes that are going to help us move through anxiety, depression, addiction, and the everyday struggles that shape our emotional landscape. His Fix Yourself Empowerment series, including the books The Fix Yourself Handbook and the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook, have helped thousands of people shift from merely surviving to thriving and truly living their best lives. What I love about his work is that he doesn't just rely on quick fixes or surface level advice. Today, you're going to hear all about how to learn and think differently, feel deeply, and to build a life that reflects who you really are. Today, we're going to explore how to fix what's broken inside of us without any shame or self-judgment, and how we can all begin living a more grounded and empowered place. So, Faust, welcome to the Lost and Found podcast.
Amanda, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be spending time with you.
Yes, I love it. This is great, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to help our guest. As I mentioned in your intro, you've spent nearly 40 years helping people change their lives from going through drastic transformations and sometimes having very big, scary, emotional turmoil. So I'd love it if you could explain what inspired you to create or share the Process Way of Life healing and how that has evolved through your decades of work.
When you've done things as long as I have, you get a real good feel for what works and what doesn't work. And as I'm counseling people through all the years, I started to realize that there were processes that people either were doing wrong or were just missing altogether. Processes like learning what real honesty is, learning how to fact find and use those facts, getting your intellect over your emotions, things like that. So, the more I began to work with this, the more processes began to show themselves. And we're at a point now where we're around 52 that we use, and I use them in my counseling all the time. And throughout the books, there's 6 books now, and I use the same format, the same processes involved to treat all different kinds of conditions. And once you master them, you really get a real good idea on how to live your life.
Oh my goodness! So there's 52 now. I had no idea. That's a lot. It seems a little overwhelming. I'm sure for some people that if they've never tried to work on their own emotional healing before, or let's say like you had one book, How to Fix Your Addictions as well. What would you say to somebody who's supposed to start those 52 processes? Can you break them down piece by piece?
Yeah.
Does it go in phases? How would somebody even begin to approach a 52-step process?
Well, that's the misnomer you want to get past. It's not a step-by-step thing where you got to start at process 1 and go to 52. You may use 10 processes. You may not need the other 42. Some you'll need more than others. You'll need a greater part of this one, maybe not so much that one. If you're a very honest person, for example, honesty may not be one you really have to focus on once you understand it. If you're a person who is very emotional and reacts real quickly, you're going to want to use that process that teaches you how to get your intellect before your emotions so that you're not emoting over something that is irrational. It depends on where people are in their lives and what they need, but the processes are all spelled out for them so that they can say, all right, with this particular problem, I can see where that process fits in for me.
Okay, great. I love that. You can make it more...
You tailor it for yourself.
Yeah, applicable to your thing. So you're I'm sure like many therapists, you don't approach every client as a cookie cutter situation. It's a case by case basis. They all have different lives. They all have different experiences, different ages, level of emotional control, level of emotional intelligence. So you have to cater your service to them based on what that person needs, not necessarily the common denominator of, well, these 3 people have depression. Let's just give them all 3 the same thing. It may not work. Yeah, that makes sense. So for this show, we focus a lot on trying to empower people who feel lost or really stuck in their lives. So if you were trying to empower a reader to try and take more control of their world and their inner thoughts and feelings, for somebody who feels stuck and disconnected right now, what would they do with you, and how would they work through those processes together?
I'm an information definition person, if you will. So I'm going to want to get the facts. I'm going to want to get as much information as I can. And then I'm going to want to organize that. Let's put a picture of who you are first. I think too many therapists dive into one or two issues, and that confuses people. So I want to get that information first. The second thing I want to do is say, let's look at what's not working for you. For example, if you've got a horrible diet, sleep schedule, or you're putting accelerants into your body, things like that. Let's purge what doesn't work slowly. Let's get what's going to kind of be the anchor as you're trying to swim through life. Let's get those things disconnected as much as we can. Then we'll prioritize what needs to change. And I'm always a stickler for small incremental steps. I don't think that people make big moves in their lives. You lose those very quickly. Even in my books, there's 7 to 8 pages in the chapter, and then following each chapter, there are 6 or 7 steps. Now do these things. So then define, purge what's not good, define how we're going to move forward, and then give the information and the action steps to do that. That's how people work with me. It's a very practical.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it sounds like you're giving them a little bit at a time, so it doesn't just feel like you're breathing from a fire hose or drinking from a fire hose, sorry. And that can be really, really hard. And especially to even get the courage to begin saying to yourself, I actually need help. That's kind of one of the major first steps for a lot of people that listen to the show. That, what I've been doing has just been, I've been running in circles. I haven't really fixed anything. I've just dampened the noise, or I've quieted the feelings or buried them deeper, and that doesn't always solve everything all the time. So I love that you brought that up and made it into a bite-sized kind of situation. You've mentioned in some of your handbooks, especially the How to Fix Your Internal Language handbook. Could you explain a bit more about how that internal dialogue has trapped them or allowed them to become free themselves?
Sure. You start by understanding that, of course, we think, and we think with language. So what's going on in our brains, if you will, is we're talking to ourselves, which, of course, everyone says, I don't talk to myself. And I say, well, you certainly do.
Yeah, you liar.
If you're thinking, you're talking to yourself. And if you are thinking with negativity or anger or aggression, and you do that a lot, that tends to be your default. So, something happens and you go right in your mind and you go negative. This always happens to me. I can't stand that person. This will never change. And we can see people attacking each other. That all starts internally. So, if we can change the way that occurs, then we become more positive people. We can talk about what's going on in our world, but it's in our heads where we think about it, where we define who we are, where we create a kind of internal persona of who we are, and then we act upon that. We talked about getting trapped. When you're negative a lot of the time, boy, you're talking about a trap that has its teeth around you, and that's hard to get that to change that. So I give people very practical steps to start thinking in positive terms.
Yeah, no, and that's good. Do you have an example from your own life where you may have had a trapped statement or a subconscious thought that was holding you back, or did it ever get to a point that it affected your career or your relationships or your
Sure.
ability to cope?
Like many people, I was that person who, regardless of what happened, it would go in, and then I'm starting to get aggressive about it, and that's not going to happen. How dare you? And that person, and now you start talking about it in your own head. And many of us will even go into conversations in our heads. We're having conversations with that other person who we don't like, who's not with us at that point. I call it ghost screaming. And that's what we're doing. We're screaming at other people. So sure, I was one of those people, like almost everyone is. We again, will deny that. I knew that somewhere along the line, if the way I felt about myself and the world I live in, the people who were in my world, the work that I do, if that was going to be a positive thing, then I needed to be positive. I needed to at least curb the negativity and be able to take a step back and think about it in terms of, what can I do about this? And the world is not as dark as it seems. We have a tendency to make it dark. So I like anyone else, I needed to get out of that if I was going to help other people do it.
Right. Yeah. And we've had a few other psychologists and a couple psychiatrists and mental health specialists on the show over time. And a few of them have talked about making sure that they set that boundary between the patient's needs and helping them and serving them for their clients, and then not trying to take that home with them. It's always very difficult if you're in an empath kind of service, right? Because you're trying to help other people deal with all that emotion. It's really hard to not carry that with you too, or not let it start to impact your own self or your own points of view. What do you do to help maintain that separation between I'm at work, so we're doing this, and then I'm at home, this wasn't my problem or it wasn't my fault? Is there a way that you can keep the two separated? Since you have so many years of experience, I figured you have some good tips or ways of keeping that boundary significant.
The boundary, a lot of people will look for that. What's the boundary? If you're doing, first of all, if you like what you do, if you really love counseling people like I do, that boundary is not such a big thing because it's in perspective when you walk into the office. There's this person, they're coming in. I've reviewed the chart. I know what we talked about, what we're going to be dealing with this, and I am ready. And I love that person. And that's the thing. I don't. This is not a business for me. It's a life. It's the way I live life. I love people. I love to be around them. So when they walk in, I am already engaged and ready to go. And now we're going to deal with their problem. We're going to talk about that. We're going to do what we need to do, set some steps and put some steps in place to help them. When the session is over, I'm done because the next person, 10 minutes or so later, is coming into the office. That cannot exist. So one of the things, we can empathize, we can sympathize, but we don't emotionally attach to the point that it has all that residue that it leaves behind. And then the next person comes in and the process continues. If I'm a client, that's how I want my therapist to be. I want to know that they're fresh. They really want to be there. They have the skills to help move me through this. And when it's done, I don't need them to be thinking about me, about go to the next person, because that tells me they can stay fresh. And then when you close the door at the end of the day, you're not a counselor anymore. You're not a psychologist anymore. You're the person at home or out in a social environment or whoever. I turn that right off. And people will say to me, "Gee, you're a psychologist. What do you think about this?" And I say, "I don't know. I have no idea."
Yeah.
They say, "You're not going to answer?" I said, "No, because all I can do is give you general information that probably won't be applicable in its entirety, your situation. And you're going to walk away saying, oh, he said that, but I didn't."
Right. Or you can tell me now, but without me having the ability to ask you more detailed questions or we dig
Correct.
further into the problem, I can only give you a generalization. So, I mean, that's probably smart for your own business sense, right? That I can't give away information that isn't being medically requested for whatever the purpose of that your needs are. Really, you don't want to be liable for something. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it sounds like you've derived a lot of meaning out of this life of service for others and helping people through these things. What encouraged you to go into psychology or therapy to begin with? Did you start out that way, or did it kind of just you weaved and bobbed and found it?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I'm the little kid who was thought people were fascinating from the beginning, and who grew up to or grew to be the adolescent who kids talk to because I listened, and through high school, and then by the time I got it, I was a junior in high school, I knew what I was going to do. So it was then college, and it was through graduate school and do all those things you need to do, and here I am now, all these years still going. It's who I am. Very few people, I think, can take their vocation and say, "That's who I am." It is.
Right.
That's me.
Yeah, good. That's very lucky that you were able to find something so early on. I know a lot of younger generations right now that's not so easy or it doesn't seem to be happening quite as fluidly. So that's very lucky that you were able to land into something that you enjoy so much. You've worked with populations kind of all over the place. Did you specialize in anxiety and depression to begin with, or did you
No,
study something else?
it was more of a general approach. And you get into counseling, just really individuals, then the couples would come. So now we're doing couples and marriage counseling. And then for whatever reason, I never did figure this one out. Women started coming, and most of the women, particularly 30 years ago, went to women for help. And for whatever reason, I had a practice that was loaded with women and had a lot of abuse and traumatic things. And it's like anything else. If you pay attention to people, you can really get a good feel about things. And I remember calling way back in 25, 30 years ago, calling a gynecologist up. The guy had a woman that was coming in, and I said, I don't think what's going on is working. I think this is hormonal, and she wanted to hang up on me. Here we are 30 years later, and now we're finding out how much of it is hormonal based, not just for women, for men. So women became a big part of the practice. Then I went with got certified in addictions. I was working in a prison and got certified in addiction. So it went into that. It's just, they all blend together. And the more skills you have and the greater access you have to different populations, the more skills you get, the more reference points you have in order to go back and say, I remember I did that with that population. I think it's going to work here. Where if you don't have all that, then, you have to kind of figure it out as you go. So me being diversified was something that was by design all the way through.
Sure, yeah. And you can never have the same day twice then. Yeah. So
You know,
it always stays interesting. That's very cool. Because you had such a diversified career, were there ever moments that really like stuck out to you from a certain population that you were working with? Like, wow, that's an aha moment for me. Not necessarily just that the patient's going through that, but that's an aha moment that I'm going to take away with me for the rest of my life, for the rest of my career.
I looked at that many times, and there were clients that you said, gee, I kind of really got involved in that one. But what I found was with every client, I get just a little bit of that. If you really love what you do, you are investing yourself. There are too many people that do this with various certificates and just getting into it because maybe it can pay well, they think, or whatever it may be, and they don't invest. There is an empathetic part of this field where you get in and you are one with that client in that session. And when you do, it's like the lights go on in every session you do. And I can walk away from every client that I've had and say, I learned something new from that person. But that's part of my willingness to absolutely be involved in what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. I think that you're probably right. There's little moments throughout each person's session or each client session, and just the pride, I'm sure, that you get when you watch your client have their own transformation or they have that pivotal moment. There's little tiny things that kind of lead up to it, right? But the moment you get to that like hockey stick statistic where they just shoot off, you're like, yes, they're doing better. They're going to get through this, even though you knew it the whole time, but you needed them to get to that point where it clicks. I'm sure it's really, really cool to be able to witness someone's evolution in real time like that, again and again. Let's talk a little bit more about growth. You talk a lot in all of your different handbooks at various times about, you need to get in and do the work. How can someone tell the difference between I'm having just a healthy discomfort with a situation that's going to lead to growth and the self-punishment or the disguise of, well, I'm doing the work right now. And you need to know the difference of you're uncomfortable. Yes, right? It is what it is. You're going to get through that moment versus the part where like they're pushing themselves in the wrong direction. They think they're growing, but really they're just like causing more problems than they are solutions.
I like to help people understand that we're talking about a learning. Growth is really about learning. And learning is always a function of repetition over time. If you're willing to stay with it, you're going to be uncomfortable. But if you're willing to stay with it and have a plan to move forward, it almost always works. That the difference when people are not moving forward is that they're really not committed to the process. They're doing it. They're being told to do it, and they're doing it, but there's no self-expansion. There's no willingness to challenge. There's no embracing of change. When you're willing to do all those things and stay with it, that's when good things happen because it takes time. And the thing is, you can get those quick steps. You'll get the quick fixes and you can make those quick changes. But the shelf life is very short. That's the problem because you need all the little steps because there's learning that solidifies in our brains at every little step. And once we accomplish that step, your brain will now make that part of the way it works. And now you're ready to proceed to the next one. Quick fixes don't do that. They skip all those steps. So you really have when you fall back, and you will, that's okay. Learning, you go forward, 5 steps, you take a step back. But when you take the step back, you're taking it back into territory you have covered with an idea of what to do right there because you've already did it. There's learning there. But when you don't have that and you fall back, you're in a void.
You're avoidant. Yeah, that's a big key word there for sure. Do you have a personal example that you might be willing to share of your own growth trajectory? Was there ever a moment in your life or possibly your career where you had a difficult growth moment and you didn't really want to see it through, but you did and you came out the other side? Could you talk about maybe that transformation for yourself?
We all have things we like to do, and I love this profession. The other thing I could have done, and I thought I might, was to go into more of a film and directing and things like that.
Wow, yeah.
And actually, we're starting to do that at this point in my career. We're doing a documentary, preparing a documentary, so it's kind of fun. But in the early going, that was the one where I was counseling. I had my life, family was going. I said, okay, I'd like to do that, but I did what people do at that point. I was thinking about the goal. I didn't have the time nor the resources to say, well, let me go and cross all those little steps I have to cross in order to get over there. So then you start, when that happens, you start to feel, there's urgency with nothing to back it up. I want that. So there was a point where I said, let me table this. I'm not going to do this. I'll enjoy it. I'll study it. I'll do all those neat things that people can do, but I'm not going there. If I get to a point later in my life that I want to do that, and that's what we do. So when the books came into play, and then I've done so many interviews, and I'm asked to do so many things. So this documentary thing came up, and they said, "Well, we need the psychological expert because it's about trauma." And we're actually doing if everything flies and someone wants to buy it, it'll be based on the Las Vegas shooting that we had 4 years
Oh,
ago.
yeah. Yeah.
And one of the heroes from that, who went in, spent 8 hours taking people out, and then went down in PTSD for 2 years himself, and then came through that. So now I'm getting a chance to blend both of those together. But in the early going, it was more about, I want to get to the end. I want to work out and lose all the weight and get the muscle on in like 3 weeks. It was not going to happen. So, you learn from that and you say, okay, well, there's a right way to do this. Take your time. I've done this in my life and other things. Now I'll apply it to this. It works.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you said, I'm going to set it aside, not necessarily I'm going to just toss it to all begin with, like telling yourself that that's just never going to happen. You didn't say that. You just said, well, if it works out later in life, I'm going to say yes. You kept that opportunity door open. What would you say to somebody that might be struggling with that whole, it's too late for me to start over, it's too late for me to pick that back up, or I was never meant to do that, or this is silly. I love doing it, but I can't make it work. If somebody just keeps saying can't over and over again, what would you say to somebody that feels like it's too late for them to do what you're getting to do?
We have to change the internal language. So we're back to that, what they're doing in their head. The other thing is, I ask questions. I keep going deeper. I say, you can't do that? And they'll say, no, I can't. I said, why? Well, I'm older now. Old people can't do this? Well, it's harder when you're old. Why? And what I'm doing is I'm helping them go deeper inside themselves, because that's where the problem is. You made a decision. And I know in a situation like that, I know it's fear and insecurity that are driving that. There may be some past experiences where they weren't so successful, but as I tell them, those are only situations where when you think you failed, you got to a point where you didn't have the resources or the learning to keep going. So that gave you that. Now take what you did in that failure and push it aside and move to the next step. It tells you needed more information. You can do anything you want at any stage of your life, regardless of who you are. Why not?
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people struggle with the shame or the fear of somebody is going to judge me, or they're going to laugh at my plans, or they're going to criticize whatever it is, and learning how to shut that outside noise off. It's really hard, whether you're a young person or older. It never stops happening, but it might get easier the more you practice and you build your own confidence by following through on those plans or on those dreams, or doing a little bit at a time. It starts to prove to yourself that you can do that hard thing. I think that's a really great answer. You also talk a little bit about faith in some of your content as well, not necessarily religious faith, but faith in the process of life itself. So, from your perspective, how does faith play into healing for people who feel lost or betrayed by life or betrayed by the experiences they've had?
I mean, I always tell people, so I can be transparent, I am a person of faith. In the initial book that I Fix Yourself Handbook, I talk about two kinds of faith. One is concrete faith, one is abstract faith. Concrete faith is just what we can touch, what we can see, what we can feel, what we have a little bit more control of. And most people don't even have that one. And you really need that to get to the second, the more complex faith. Faith in I'm going to turn the light switch on and the light's going to go on. Faith in my spouse, faith in my ability to do this thing that I've done for so many years. I have that faith. That's concrete faith. When we start challenging ourselves or don't accept the challenge, I can't do this. There's no way I'll be able to handle that. No one will let me do this. Your faith is a problem for you at that point. You have to have enough faith in yourself to say, yeah, I can do this. I may not be able to do it now. I may have to learn. 7 years ago, I said, okay, I'm going to write a book. And then I thought, well, everyone's writing these things and I'm seeing how they're going. Let me table the writing. I'm going to take as much time as it takes to study the industry. I'm going to see what it's like about published. I'm going to talk to agents and I'm going to talk to publishers and people who help other people get published. I'm going to learn how to become a writer that knows how to write versus one who's a professional writer and knows how to write for books. So I took almost a year off and just did all that research, called people, talked to people, went to seminars, online workshops and things. I learned everything about the industry. Now, the difference in me a year later saying, now I'm going to sit by this keyboard and I'm going to start doing something versus what I was trying a year ago, day and night, because I had the confidence. I knew what to do. And I also knew if I got stuck, I had 3 or 4 people I could ask. All right, this happened. What do you think? And I learned that I was going to need a copy editor and I was going to need a publisher and I was going to need, if I want to market it, I need a publicist to get out and get me out there. So I knew all those things. What I'm saying is confidence, which grows into faith, is based on our willingness to learn and to not just jump in and say, I got to go, because you're jumping into a fan that's on. Put it that you're going to get chopped up. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's quite an image. Oh my gosh, and that's a very scary thing to do. What did it feel like to finally get your words out there? You did spend that year doing research and started to write your books, and now they're out and you're adding more and more as time goes on. How did it feel to get your first book out there and to be able to start saying, like, I am a writer, I am an author? What was that like for you?
It's an interesting question, and it's one that people have asked. And when I say the answer, they say, huh? I did all this work, and I realized that what I loved is the work, just like with my people. I love the work. I remember publishing the first book, and when you're an author, you get your author's copy, and it comes in the mail, and there's the envelope, and I say, I know what this is, and I'd seen the cover. I knew what everything looked like. I picked the book up. I looked at it. I thought I was going to say, yeah, and I went, nothing. Felt nothing. Zero. I realized at that moment it wasn't about the book. It was about the work. It was about writing. It was about talking about it. It was teaching. It was doing all those sorts of things. That I had done that, I said, okay. Said I wanted to, I did. Now what? Should I put this on the shelf? And people stop over and say, by the way, I wrote my book. What do I want to do with that? And do I want it just to sit somewhere on Amazon and a billion books in front of me? No, what I wanted to do was, then I realized it's time to really get into this. You got the first one, you put your program together, the team is there, let's move on. By that time, the pandemic hit and the anxiety was flowing. So the topic was right in front of me.
Yeah, we're ripe for the taking. That's the exact time when you need to help people, is when they're going through that exact problem, right?
Yeah. But if you get stuck on being enamored at, look what I did, okay, that's it. That's a destination you got to, and then what else? What do you want to do? So for me, when I looked at it, it didn't do anything. And I'm 6 books in. The seventh one I'm just starting, and it's more about the work. It's the creative process. It's the connecting with other people. That's what it's all about. The book itself, it's there, and people buy it and they read it, and that's fine. But when they get back to me and say, "I have this question about this," now that now I can interact with them. That feels good.
Yeah, that I like that it sounds like you're approaching a little bit what we've talked about on the show before, the arrival fallacy,
Yeah.
where people believe that once I get to this thing or once I earn this thing, I'm going to feel great. I'll finally be happy. If this, then, whenever this finally happens, it'll be here. It'll show up. I'll feel better. And the truth was it did happen to you. You did write the first book. You did become an author in that sense. Your identity was tweaked to include author now, but you realized it was the process, it was the bridging the gap between the two, the research and the final product that was the most fun for you. And then the aftermath while you write the next one. So it was cool to hear that you didn't get hung up on the arrival fallacy part where you weren't like, oh God, what does this mean?
What it did for me was to define something. And I'd written about this in the book. It's interesting. I have a whole chapter on it. It's one of the processes I call destination versus journey living. And I always tell people just what you said. When I get there, I'm going to feel great. First of all, you don't even know what it's going to be like when you get there, because the world's dynamic, things change. You may get there and say, I don't know, this isn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
So what I realized was it's all about the daily journey of life. The book is that part of me. I don't want to say it's dead, but it's done. It's over. Today I'm in a whole new day, and I'm breathing, and I want to maximize. I'm a person of faith. My Lord gave me breath, so I want to maximize every one that I got. That's the way I look at things. And so it's a new day. The book that's the past. It's a new day. It's a new part of the journey. I want to be in this part of the journey today. Nice to get the book. That was great. It's on the shelf with the other 5 that I wrote. And now we'll go to the next thing.
Yeah. Tell us a little more about you said that you have a 7th one that's on the way. And tell us a little bit more about that one. What's the subject matter of that? And what's maybe the main lesson for anybody that's listening today?
It's going to be on faith. And I want to take people, if you choose to have your faith in something spiritual, that's good, wonderful for you. But the book is about understanding what faith is. It's another process where people are emotional, or yes, it is, or no, it's not. Get that away from me. And no one really, I should say no one, but many people don't understand what faith is to begin with. So I thought that there's a missing link here. I don't think I've seen that defined accurately so that anyone can read it. Even if you're an atheist, you can, atheists should be people of faith in something, but maybe it's themselves, maybe it's something about their lives, whatever. Faith is still there. And so I wanted to kind of expose all the information about that and give people something that's a little more defined. And while they're deciding what they're going to do with that part of their life, they may say, okay, I can see a whole lot of this. Let me see how I want to apply that. That's
Yeah, I like that. I'm curious for that book too. You mentioned earlier in this conversation that a lot of times you might have clients or you've worked with people where they wanted to get the quick fix or the quick answer that, like you said, I want to lose the 100 pounds in 3 weeks, or I want to skip this part of the divorce and just get through it, or I just want to, hurry up and stop feeling so grief stricken over this problem or whatever it is. And they try and work around it. Have you noticed at all, like, anybody that might be using their faith to like kind of work around the work that they need to do? Like, do you cover how like faith can't be the quick fix either?
Faith is not a quick fix. It never should be. Faith is something that you have that can be applied. It's one of the tools you can apply to the way you live your life. Faith, like anything else, is a day-to-day proposition. Most people have this, well, I'll pray for this. Oh, I got that. Now I'm done. Well, that's not faith. It's just this. Faith is something that is just part of you every day. Can you use it to learn and to go slow? You'll need it, because when you go slow, you're going to be challenged. So it's one more tool in the box where you say, well, let me use this. Let me help me maybe stay stable and keep working my program.
Okay. Yeah. No, and that's good. I'm glad that you said that, it can't really be used like that, but it can help you live a more stable life if you're leaning on to something that'll help you build up that better foundation. You've got a lot of really good process oriented suggestions and solutions and methodologies in all of your work. It seems like it's about small intentional steps. So for someone who's listening right now who might be overwhelmed by the idea of fixing themselves, what's one process that they could start practicing today to move them in the right direction?
I have 3 or 4 of them that I call the core processes. Honesty is one of them. And I'll ask everyone, are you honest? And of course they say yes. And I say, well, let's do a little analogy here. You're cooking in the kitchen and you're going to use an onion. You peel that paper off. Does it smell bad? No. Take the first layer. How are we doing so far? Now we're 3, 4, 5 layers deep. Tears coming? You uncomfortable? And they say yes. And I say, welcome to what real honesty is. Because if you think honesty makes you feel comfortable, you're not honest. Honesty, until you master it, should make you feel uncomfortable. Once you do, and you're not worried about being uncomfortable because you're going to be working with the facts and what's really honest, then it becomes your best ally. But until you get there, most of what our honesty today is designed to aid in our emotional survival. That's what we've turned it into, that tool. So we decide what we want, and then we look for the facts to substantiate what we want, and we call that honesty. That's not honesty. And I work with that with every person that comes in. They'll say something, and I'll say, really? How'd you get there? Explain it. And those who have been with me for a while just stop and say, fine, teach me. The other ones say, well, I did this, this, and this. And I said, I didn't see it. Explain, because maybe you could teach me, because, man, if I could go that fast too. And then they start again. So honesty is one. The other one, big one, is your emotions. Stop feeding your emotions before you get the facts. You can still emote, but get the facts first. Let your intellect search for what is real and then respond to that. Example, go on Facebook and you find every crazy, ridiculous story in the world, and then people go repost it. And I say, did you check it out first? You're emotional, you're screaming at this person, you're taking that person off your friend list, you're arguing with your family because of that post. Did you go check it out? Okay, you got the facts, now emote over the facts. You're still able to use your emotions, but over what's real. So if you put those two things together to start, that's a foundation for moving your life forward.
Yeah. And I've heard that a lot too, that from other therapists as well, that your feelings are valid in the sense that they are yours and you are currently engaging with them, but feelings are not facts. So until you can separate the two, you're not going to be able to figure out really what's going on and what the solution is for whatever that environment is bringing up for you. So I'm glad that you brought that up, that honesty was a core part of how you would start any of these processes.
It is. And the action step, I like to always give people an action step, are questions. Something comes up, ask two questions. There's two types of questions. Environmental, ask that person or that source where you got it. And the second part is me. What am I thinking? What am I feeling about this, and why?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're really doing is you're slowing the process down. The emotions go fast, anger goes fast. The facts are then cast to the side. But once you slow the process down and say, wait a minute, let me think about this for a minute. And I want to get some facts. I want to see how I feel about it. That very process you just used took your emotions and put them over here. Wait a
Right.
minute, I got to get some more information. I need it from me. I need it from the environment or other people. I need to get more information. You really started the process off really nicely for yourself.
Good. Yeah, that sounds like the right direction you would need to go in. Was there ever a moment in your life where not necessarily that you weren't being honest with other people, but was there a moment maybe when you weren't honest with yourself about something you were feeling or dealing with? And
Sure.
once you finally decided to face that, what came up for you and how did you get
Mm-hmm.
through that uncomfortableness?
I'll work backward just for a moment. People will come in the office and say, must be great to have no problems and you can solve anything. And I say, would you want to come to see me if I never experienced anything you experienced. So needless to say, I have. And I can go back to when I was a young person. I was about 9 when my father had a massive stroke, and really just changed the complexion of the family for sure. So here's this 9-year-old who decided, well, I'll help fix things. And I remember my mother saying, why don't you just go be 9? It's, that was not who I was. So there I was. Now I'm going to take on all this stuff. And no idea how to do it. What of course followed that was the emotions that come with look at where we are and we can't change this, and oh my God, what's going on? So, it was just a great life lesson. So as I got a little older, that's when I had to be able to say, well, I can help myself and other people out, but I really got to slow down a little bit here, and I got to know what I can take on and what I can't take on. I'm gonna have to get some help.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense too. And I'm so sorry for your father. That must have been devastating. When you are a little kid, you look up to your parents so much, or at least a lot of people do. And not everybody, I understand. Not everybody has a great home life, but I can only imagine that must have been very difficult to lose a parent that young. I don't know what I would have done if I had been in your shoes. That would have been really, really tough. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So we have just a few more minutes here, and I'd love to ask you there's like 5 core questions that I ask every guest before we close out. The first one is, what do you want out of life, and have you found what you're looking for?
And I have found what I'm looking for. I always wanted to have my faith where I wanted it to be. It's there. Family is there. And then professionally, I've always wanted to be that person who was going to be in service. That's how I define my life. I don't know how anyone can define life without being in service of other people. That's where you take who you are and you put it out there, and you see it come alive. So yeah, I've been able to be the person who worked for what I wanted, and see it come to fruition.
Yeah, I love that. That's wonderful. How do you define success, and what does success look like in your life?
For me, uh, definitions of success is to be able to be happy. We're very, production oriented people. What did I accomplish today? But at the end of the day, were you happy? Genuinely happy? Not happy because I got the new car. Happy with my life? Do I feel the balance? I always talk about balance as being physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually balanced. If you can balance those attributes out, that's where happiness lives. So that's what I look for. So in myself, that's what I've worked very hard to do, to get to a point where each day, physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, I'm kind of balanced. And you know when one of those are off. So for me, it's always about that balance. Buddhists would call that nirvana. So I look for that balance.
Yes, I think that's an honorable thing to look for, and admirable to try and keep that balance or maintain that as best as you can. And so I know some people argue that balance is impossible or it's not a thing because there's no perfect life. But I think if you've hit that for yourself and that's how it works for your life right now, I think that that's amazing. Okay. And then if you could go back, 10, 20 years ago to talk to your younger self, what is the advice that you would give?
Keep it slow. Younger, more energy, a little less experience. Just keep going slow. Stay focused. Stay committed, and let no one tell you that you cannot do.
Huge, huge point. I love that. Thank you. For your family or your loved ones, if they were to listen to this episode, what's the one lesson you would hope that they would take away from the conversation we've had today?
I think they know that already. My family knows I'm a service-oriented person. I preach that, and I live it. They see it. Um, it let me say it this way: in any episode of anything that I ever do, they know service is coming out. That'd be what I wanted to get.
That's a good legacy to leave behind, to live by example for what you truly believe in. That's really great. And then finally, for all of our listeners or anyone that may be listening right now who feels like they're just kind of wandering through life, they're lost, they're having that existential crisis of what to do with themselves or where they want to go, what's the advice that you would give someone that feels lost and stuck?
Ask for help. Get out of your own head. If you think you've exhausted so many different avenues to try to get yourself straightened out, and you can't, that's nothing more than a signal that you're stuck in a spot that someone else can just gently push you through. It may be a couple months you want to talk to someone, it may be a couple years. That's irrelevant. Consider yourself worthy. Consider the fact that you have all the right in the world to be happy, and that this is a big one, that you are not wasting anyone's time. People are waiting to wrap their arms around you, give them a chance.
Oh, that's really good. I appreciate that a lot. I think that's a really good reminder that you deserve just as much happiness as the next person, right? We spend so much time comparing ourselves, especially in this social media day and age. It's very easy to do because you have so much access to people's online lives, and not everything's as rosy as you think it is, and everybody's only showing you the highlight reel. So remembering that you deserve to be just as happy is really good. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, Faust, please let everybody know, how can they find you if they want to work with you, or they want to, come to any of your events or read your books. How do they hook up with that and contact you?
The easiest way to find me is on my website. It is my name, faustruggiero.com. Everything you need to know about me is there. The excerpts from the books are there, all different types of information. And there's a contact link. If anyone wants to contact me, I do get back to people.
Excellent. Okay. And are you currently serving clients or doing therapy as well? Okay, excellent. So if they're interested in that, they can find out all that information there too. Well, thank you so much. This has been really great. And I'm glad you took the time out of your day to let us, pick your brain about your books and all of your really phenomenal insights from across your career. So this has been really wonderful. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Of course. So everybody, I will put all of his information into the description box or show notes. You can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We will, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Leave us a review, 5 stars. Let us know what you think with a comment. We'd love to get your feedback and hear more about what you enjoyed from the show. Or if you have any follow-up questions as well, we'd be happy to send those over to Mr. Ruggiero and he can answer them for you. So hit us up at email for hello@podcastforthelost.com. All of our social media is under @podcastforthelost. And remember, wanderers are always welcome.